I made my international debut at 20, and I was playing regularly at Reading at 20, and I felt like there was a lot of pressure for me to reach my potential. And at the same time, I was having issues with my personal life. I lost my dad, and my mum was very ill. I found it very difficult to kind of balance the two as a 20-year-old footballer, you know, kind of trying to make his way in the professional game. But I just never got that consistent run of goals and games. And then you see friends move on, do well, they have a good season, they move on, move to the Premier League, scoring goals, playing international. I'm like, I could have done that, I should have done that.
Simon Church is a retired footballer who had an impressive career as a striker. Starting at Reading's youth academy, he spent a decade with the club, scoring 22 goals in 104 league appearances. Simon also played for Charlton Athletic, MK Dons and Dutch side Roda Carrada, amongst others. On the international stage, Simon represented Wales, earning 38 caps and scoring several crucial goals. Notably, he was part of the historic Wales team that reached the semi-finals of the UEFA Euros competition in 2016, which was a milestone achievement for Welsh football. His international career also included memorable performances and goals such as his first senior goal in a friendly against Scotland and a vital penalty against Northern Ireland. Now he's on the Mindset for Sport podcast with Christy Scanlon to talk about his footballing career, mental health issues, coping with injury and retiring from the beautiful game. I could do with everyone, Simon. I always start at the beginning. How did football become a passion for you at a very young age?
I think it was about 5 or 6 years old. My dad just took me to just the local team and just fell in love with it from there. I think as soon as I can remember, I had a ball by my feet, one of those cliche ones, but I just fell in love with the game, and that's all I wanted to do when I was young, is go out in the garden and play football and try and play football as much as I can, watch it on the telly. And yeah, I was just absolutely obsessed with it.
And was there anyone that influenced you to kind of support you within that journey? You mentioned obviously your dad then, but was there anyone else that maybe guided you or kind of enabled you to think, okay, this could be something for me as a career in the future?
No, it's mainly my dad. As I said, we were obsessed, so we used to play, you know, any club we could. I think we even joined the Scouts on a Saturday just so we could play Scout football. So we were playing, Tuesday, Thursdays, Friday, Saturday and Sundays. And then, at the age of 9, I got approached by Wycombe Wanderers. So from an early age, I was in a professional kind of environment anyway. And you can always tell, you know, what people were saying, he's got a chance and all this kind of stuff. But I was never pushed. I was never, it all came off my own back. It's all I wanted to do. And I decided at an early age that I'm going to be a professional footballer and I'm going to do everything I can to kind of achieve that.
You mentioned Wycombe Wanderers and obviously your transition into academy football at Reading. What did you learn from that period of your development? Is there anything that you can reflect upon?
It's just that professional environment. We lived close to the club, so because you played for the academy, you got the tickets, and just the buzz of going down and, you know, sitting in really good seats, seeing it firsthand, and the atmospheres on Saturday was great. And then when I was 14 years old, I moved to Reading, and the academy. The difference in the academies was chalk and cheese, really. I mean, we went from playing Colchester away to playing Arsenal at Highbury at under 14s, and I was like, this is where I want to be. I'm playing against Arsenal, Man United, and, you know, the standard of players and everyone at England internationals, it's where I wanted to be. So there was a big step up. I managed to kind of take it in my stride a little bit, and I could get a taste of this is where I want to be.
Why did that happen in terms of Wycombe and Reading? How did that transition happen? I'm just interested in that.
Yeah, it's a strange one because at the time I didn't really think anything of it. But we were part of a deal for one of the first team players. I think it was Nathan Tyson went to Wycombe from Reading, and me and another academy player went to Reading in the academy with a bit of money, I think. But at the time I had no idea. I just thought I was moving to Reading because I was doing well at Wycombe. But I knew I was doing quite well. I was playing up a year. At 13, 14, so I and the coaches were always kind of, you know, you can get the sense that you're doing okay without. But I never thought anything of it. And then, Reading came in and just said, you're going to Reading. We had no idea about the stuff that was going on behind the scenes.
Is that common in terms of transfers? I'm just interested on that. That's the first time I've ever heard someone part of a deal at an under 14s age group. Is that common?
Well, it is. It's a lot more common nowadays. I think back then it was probably the start of it. As I said, I don't really know too much about it. I heard a few things, and I've spoken to people since that confirmed it, but I don't really know the ins and outs of it. But certainly nowadays, people are moving at 9, 10, 11. People getting agents and getting scouts. It's become a bit crazy. But yeah, certainly at that age, as a kid, when you get the opportunity to move to a club where you're going to be playing against Arsenal's and Man United's and Chelsea's, and this is where you want to be. So it's an absolute no-brainer for me.
Did you embrace that then, Simon, in terms of playing against those better elite players within the English football pyramid? Again, the reason I ask that is that sometimes, again, even in kind of your later career, people have different transitions and they might cope differently to certain, environments. How was that for you in terms of going into that environment at Reading and playing the likes of Arsenal, at Highbury, etc.? Can you kind of reflect upon that and give us some insight on how that developed you as a player?
Yeah, I think, I was never put under any pressure from my dad or my parents or my close kind of network. It was all a case of, this is your opportunity. You've got the opportunity. You've deserved the opportunity. And I felt comfortable as soon as I went in there. Sometimes you look around, you're like, well, these players are playing international football, and there's a huge gap in standard. But I never felt that. I felt like I could compete it, and I deserved to be there. And certainly, I lost that a little bit when I became a professional footballer. I think when you're younger, you haven't got as much fear. Well, I didn't have as much fear. I know there's a lot more fear nowadays, but I think that pressure brings on the fear. And like I said, I didn't feel the pressure to do it. It was the only pressure I put on was the pressure I put on myself, because I wanted it so badly. I didn't think about anything else.
How do you think that pressure changed when you become a footballer? Is it maybe the intrinsic rewards of winning contracts, trying to perform at a football club, the pressure of the fans, pressure of the environment? Is that what you meant by that in terms of the different outlooks towards your emotional processes there?
100%. I think you quickly find yourself, when you enter the professional stage at 18, 19, 20, everyone's fighting for your place. There's always an opportunity for you to fall out of the team. If you fall out of the team, there's a chance for your career to go backwards and fall down the leagues and things like this. So the pressure's that. There's also the pressure of the fans. I think, I can remember we played an FA Youth Cup game and we went on the fans forum and they were talking about who, there's only a couple of players that they felt they could go and progress. And then when I made my first team debut, naively, I just went and had a look at the fans, because that's what you're intrigued to know. And then this was at the beginning of Twitter and things like that. So you soon kind of realise to stay away from that. But it's just human nature. You want to kind of see what people are saying about you. And that brings another side of pressure. But certainly once you're established as a first-team player and you're doing quite well, I made my international debut at 20 and I was playing regularly at Reading at 20. And I felt like there was a lot of pressure for me to reach my potential. And at the same time, I was having issues with my personal life. I lost my dad and my mum was very ill. And I found it very difficult to kind of balance the two as a 20-year-old footballer, kind of trying to make his way in the professional game.
Do you think that's maybe the side football fans don't see? You mentioned obviously your parents then, and obviously those pressures away from the football pitch. Obviously, as fans and as even coaches or even, looking from an outsider in, you only see what is happening on the pitch and you don't necessarily see everything else surrounding that. Do you feel like there's a limitation to that? And obviously that can impact you in terms of how you perform.
100%, yeah. I think, at the end of the day, we're humans as well. There's things going on in our personal lives the same as everyone else. Everyone's got the same kind of concerns. And even from a financial point of view, people think, well, you're a professional footballer, how can you moan? You're earning good money and all that kind of stuff. And, it can end tomorrow. It can go. You've only got a short career. And also, like I said, you've just got the same worries as everyone else. So So I think, certainly in the last couple of years, it's been kind of brought to the public, whereas before everyone would brush it under the carpet, not discuss it, and just get on with it. And that's something that I felt like I had to do. Certainly at that age, I just had to kind of bury it. And my performances were going down and down and down and down. And then you feel like as a player, you know, you get all the pressure saying he's not performing, he's not doing well, he's not this, he's that. And it does get on top of you. And I think a lot of fans probably don't think that. And they're entitled to their opinion as well. Football's based on opinions. So you're never going to get away from, you know, I can remember I played against West Ham and I scored 2. And I looked on my thing and I was getting messages saying I should have scored a hat-trick. Rubbish, all this kind of stuff. So you're never going to win. I think the more experience you have of that, the more you can kind of learn to deal with it a bit better.
If I bring you back to your first team debut then at Reading, what was that feeling like for you? You mentioned, you know, these motivational drives that you've had to try and make it as a footballer, and then you get the opportunity to actually perform and become a regular first team player. Can you reflect on that and what that feeling was like for you going into that game?
Yeah, I think my debut in professional football was on loan at Crewe. I did quite well in the under-21s for Wales, and I got a loan in League One, and that was kind of my first experience of it. And I was really ready. I made my debut for Reading in the FA Cup with, you know, the team that was part of the Premier League, all the big players, but for me, there was just never going to be an opportunity there at that moment in time. So I felt like I was ready. I did well in the youth team. I did well for Wales under-21s. And, you know, everyone was saying, like, you need your opportunity, but you're just not going to get it here. So I think that was the beauty of loans back then. If you were performing well, you'd get a very good loan move. And I was lucky enough to get some good loan moves and get some exposure to first team football, first team environment, completely different. You know, people were fighting for their livelihoods here and fighting relegation, fighting promotion. Everyone's job's on the line. So it was a real good experience at a young age to kind of get that and to deal with disappointments, because something you don't learn going through the youth team is dealing with real disappointments of, you know, you can lose on a Saturday, but the worst thing you're going to do is stuck at your parents or whoever it is who are going to tell you didn't play well. But when you're playing in front of however many people, they're all going to let you know if you didn't perform.
Did you feel like that changed your values going into obviously those environments? And you mentioned, you know, people's jobs are on the line, you know, managers' jobs are on the line, even players. Did you feel like maybe your values changed towards that and your motivation changed with that as well?
Yeah, I think it does. It brings that pressure that I was talking about before. And when that pressure comes, the enjoyment lessens. So whereas before I used to really enjoy playing, I used to look forward to it, there then became this feeling of pressure. Now I'm putting on myself mainly, but also I felt the pressure around for me to kind of fulfill my potential a little bit. And yeah, just that the fear of failing kind of puts that enjoyment out of it, and it starts to become a job. And you obviously integrate it with other people that have experienced different levels of experiences in the football thing, and you listen to stories, and further on your career goes a little bit, you realise politics, like any other industry, comes into it, and the love for the game kind of lessens a little bit once you're in it. As sad as that sounds, it's just the reality, unfortunately. And then, you know, you hear people come towards the end of their career and they've seen it all, and they just say that's football, that's just the industry. It's a crazy industry, but you know, it's something that I wanted to do. I absolutely loved it, but I think at the time I was 20, 21. I was going through a real difficult stage of it, and it kind of it was certainly my second season at Reading. I had a real bad season. I think it hit me all. I just was in the dump a little bit, so it kind of changed my perspective of like getting back to enjoying it. It was very much pressure now. I've got to kind of do what I need to do, and I just wasn't doing it.
Just a quick one to let you know that over 90% of those that watch this channel do not subscribe. So if you haven't already, please click the subscribe button down below. The bigger the channel, the bigger the guests, and more importantly, it's absolutely free. Enjoy the episode.
Did you ever speak to maybe a psychologist or a support as someone that might help you during that process in terms of support mechanisms during that time? You mentioned the word pressure and obviously off the field situational issues that might have impacted your performance. Did you ever reach out to anyone, or did you ever feel like there was anyone there to maybe really dissect down why these feelings were apparent?
Yeah, I mean, the club first and foremost were brilliant with me. They kind of, they managed me really well, but I didn't want to give them an excuse for me to not play as well. So yeah, it took a while. I kind of suppressed everything, had a good rest of the season, and then when things started to go down, I was speaking to one of the players who's a good friend who also went through a similar experience to me. And he was speaking to someone, and he recommended the same person he was speaking to, and that helped a lot. And that was more performance-based kind of psychologist. Whereas, the longer it goes on and the more you realise I needed kind of more psychological help rather than, and actually dealing with the issues rather than it being a performance-based kind of therapy. But even having someone independent when no one else knew I was doing it was a good release, because most guys, especially 15, 16, 17 years ago, no one's going to be talking about that kind of stuff. You have to just get on with it.
I suppose as well, Simon, you mentioned the coach, and you don't want to give the coach an excuse to drop you. The dressing room environment, very macho, masculine people in there. You can't show weakness, you can't show fear. Especially, you mentioned those pressured games when you're trying to win points and trying to keep the club alive and keep the club afloat, depending on the situation of where they are in the league, or even going for a promotion. Did you feel like that maybe the environment of football probably prevented you to maybe look at this earlier within your career?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's it is a pressured environment, because you have to be expected to perform on the match days, but every day you have to perform, because the coaches are judging you, the manager's judging you, the players are judging you, and you've got to be able to perform. You've got to be able to push everything that's going on in your personal life to the side and perform. At the end of the day, you're an employee of the club, you're getting paid good money, and you put that pressure on yourself more than anyone else. It's the pressure that you put on yourself, because you know where you want to get to, the standards that you're at. But we are, like I said, everyone forgets that loads of people got different things going on, and I think that comes down to the manager. I've worked with lots of managers that are open. They care. They want to know what's going on in your personal life. They understand that that's a huge importance. But I've also had absolute dinosaurs who are just, the old school mentality, just get on with it. There's a varied thing, and I think it's a bit half and half in football still. We still got a lot of kind of old school mentality, but I think nowadays it's a much better environment, certainly in the academy, where they've got a lot more support than what they were when I was coming through.
What are your thoughts on the football environment as a whole, in terms of maybe player welfare? And you mentioned coaches with very traditional outlooks towards certain things, and how that's maybe been modified, and this new era of trying to bring awareness to mental well-being, etc. What are your views on it as a whole? I'm just interested on that. Again, relating to your lived experience,
Yeah, I mean, it's great. It's great that a lot of players get this support, and independent support as well, because it's important that you do feel like you could open up where it's not going to affect your progression at the club or playing in the first team or anything like that. I do feel, however, if I'm being completely honest, the upbringing I had through the academy and the respect levels for experienced pros and the management and the staff and things like that, we knew if we put a foot wrong, we're going to be in trouble. We're going to be doing doggies. We're going to be put to one side. We're going to be, shouted at, all that kind of stuff. And I do feel it's kind of, we're wrapping people in cotton wool a little bit, and the football industry is ruthless. It's difficult. It's hard. And I think we need to also have that other side where we need to be able to build a bit of resilience, find a solution, get through the tough times. And I think having a little bit of that in the academy, it's certainly been chalk and cheese now, which is a good thing, because you have got the support. But at the same time, I do think we're losing a little bit of the edge.
It's interesting around how probably giving you a sense of autonomy, sense of opportunity to grow, but also be respectful, is what you were brought up on. But then Yeah, it's a good point in terms of how, maybe different generational aspects and players are kind of more aware maybe of their mental well-being, and that support mechanism might change that outlook. I'm interested on maybe you going out on loan then, Simon. So, the different loans that you've had within your career, how did you cope with maybe relocating, etc.? Did that ever impact your well-being, or did you ever impact maybe your transitions from going from A to B? And you mentioned Crewe and the other clubs that you've played with. How did you find that as in your career?
Yeah, because I was young. I knew things were a bit difficult at home, but it was a good chance for me to kind of escape and get away from that. Experience new things. Like when I went to Crewe, I really enjoyed myself. I went to Yeovil and I had a real tough time. We're in the middle of nowhere. They were struggling. Russell Slade was manager. It was very kind of old school players. I wasn't playing. They were in a dogfight, and I was really struggling with that. But at the same time, that built a lot of resilience, and that was the first time I got the advice to go and knock on the manager's door at 18, and just ask, why am I not playing? What do I need to do? And that lesson helped me going forward. But certainly, when you're younger, it's great experience. When you're older, I went on loan to Huddersfield, and I was having my first child, and it was difficult. And then I was going to move all over the world. I moved to Holland for a year, and I got injured after 4 games. And my kids hated it there. So that was difficult. I was injured for the whole year in Holland. But again, it's a great experience. I'm glad I did it. It's a shame I didn't kind of move other places, because I felt like, those experiences are definitely worth it outside of the football pitch as well.
Did you ever find yourself maybe isolated on that? You mentioned Yeovil, and you mentioned that your words were that there was nothing there. Was that a sense of isolation and maybe a lack of escapism from partaking in football?
Yeah, and these are the situations I look back and I wish, even at 18, 19, I had something else to kind of put some energy in, because as a footballer, it's easy to kind of get overwhelmed with overthinking about every situation. You're at the training ground, you live and breathe it, you're recovering for training tomorrow, a game tomorrow. Am I going to play? Why am I not playing? What do I need to do? So especially when you're, like you said, isolated in a hotel room or something like that, you do feel a bit confined and a bit, you're in your head quite a lot. So I think having the opportunity to explore other industries, other careers, other interests while you're doing that, which again nowadays is kind of more welcomed and pushed, whereas when I was young, if it's football, if you're thinking about anything else, you're not thinking about your football.
So you mentioned Russell Slade, but in terms of maybe the reflection of the managers that you worked under, was there anyone that maybe stood out in terms of supporting you and really helped you on your journey?
Yeah, I had my academy manager, Aman Dolan, who's passed away. But he was a great mentor. He'd always ring me up when I went on loan to find out how I was going on, always giving me advice, how to deal with certain situations, whether it's good or bad. Then being exposed to Brendan Rodgers at Reading, he managed me so well from a personal point of view. This is when I lost my dad and I was still playing, and he talked to me on a human level, which I didn't get often in my career, to be honest. And just the way he would go out of his way to help and understand me as a player and a person. And I felt the same with Chris Coleman as well, to be honest. We'd all run for a brick wall for him, because he'd have that balance, that perfect balance of, this is work time, we understood what we needed to do, and he also would pull you to one side and just have a chat, just how things going, this is what I'm thinking, and as a player, you straight away just get that connection of, fine, like, great, this is what you need. And I think it's that people forget we're humans and we're not just robots, and you've got kind of to get the best out of someone. And they say man management is 95% of it.
You mentioned Brendan Rodgers. Did you see during that period that he's got potential to maybe have a longevity and a kind of a career to play at the elite level? You mentioned Premier League with Leicester, obviously Liverpool, Celtic at the moment. Did you feel on that kind of little example that you saw a human element that saw good management in him?
Well, 100%. From the human side, yes. And also the tactical and the structure and how he wanted to put his team together. We'd have an hour session. It'd be so structured. We'd have a 3-minute walk break in between each session. We'd review it. He'd do individual work with people. We'd do group work with people. And I think it's just knowledge and what he wanted to get out of the team. Unfortunately, his time at Reading was short. And how he wanted to do things, it was going to take a bit more time. We had a young team, and maybe we didn't have the right team to do what he wanted, and we struggled. But certainly could see from early on that he was going to work at a top club.
Who was the best player that you came up against, Simon? Just again flipping it on to more kind of the technical and tactical side. Is there anyone that you can remember playing against and you were thinking, well, I need to maybe step up my game here going forward, or you're really challenged in terms of your physicality maybe, or your technical or technically ability? Can you remember who was kind of good to play against?
Yeah, I mean, luckily enough, I play with Gareth Bale, and you could tell just the levels were just completely different. He would do things that I couldn't even physically think of doing. And again, in games, he would bring the moments where it would win us the game, and in training, you could see it. But I think from the opposition, I played against Modric a couple of times, and I've never seen a player dictate a game as easy as he was, or what he was doing. And I think a lot of players say the same. He's one of the best players that anyone's ever played against. I played against Ronaldo and players like that, but I think in terms of consistent throughout the game, controlling the game, and just not being able to get anywhere near him was Modric. I think a lot of players who have played against him would say so.
Why did you represent Wales? Is a family member? Is that how that come about?
Yeah, so both sides of my family are Welsh from grandparents. So when the opportunity came at 18, Brian Flynn asked, well, he knew we had Welsh blood and we were qualified to play for Wales. And my dad, his dad was passionate Welshman, so he was like, he would have absolutely loved to have seen you play. So I said yeah, and it was the best kind of decision I ever made. And we had such good memories, even the under-21s, and obviously I had a good spell. Was involved in a lot of squads and a lot of great experiences, including the Euros. And yeah, I just used to love playing for Wales. It was amazing. The atmosphere, obviously later on, the atmospheres and what we managed to achieve was unbelievable.
Obviously the Euros are happening now, whilst obviously these conversations happening, but did you ever look on the European Championships today and think about your time with Wales? And there's a lot of emphasis on maybe Scotland trying to do something similar. Did you kind of relate to that a little bit in terms of the competition and obviously seeing the first round of football so far?
Yeah, you can't help but not think about it. We're going to be doing the same 50 years down the line. I try saying it to my kids, and they don't care about it at all. But those moments were just incredible, and just having that as a kid, it sounds cliche, but you want to be playing in the major tournaments, international tournaments. That's the pinnacle, and to actually achieve that and get there and play in a semi-final was a dream come true. And just the whole experience of it, seeing how the elite kind of top 1% of football, how they operate and how they work, and it was such a great experience. And obviously now, it does bring that feeling of I wish I could do it one more time.
You mentioned Chris Coleman and Gareth Bale. What made that Wales team special? Can you kind of put a finger on what enabled you to go all the way to the semi-final and have such a successful spell in that European competition? Can you justify why that happened?
I think we had a lot of the core of the group had been together a long time through the 21s, then playing international football early all together, and we had so many near misses. I think when Chris Coleman came in, we had a rocky period with the transition of Gary Speed, who turned everything around from freshness and how to set everything up. We were going on the right way, and Chris Coleman had to come in and do a big job. And just the way he is, as I mentioned, how he brought the team together. But it's not just the team, it's the whole, it's the staff, it's everyone involved. We were so together. And we generally felt in that campaign that this is going to be the time. This is going to be our time. We missed out so many times. We had some players playing at the peak of their kind of career. They're all playing at top clubs. And, you know, like I said, we had that team where we've been together for so long that it was just the right moment. And we certainly knew throughout the qualifying campaign that we would qualify, but possibly when we got there, we didn't want to just be the number. We didn't want to be that team that just wants to enjoy the experience. We'd had some previous games against Belgium and big games like that, and we battered them. So we had the confidence to know that we could perform and do well at that tournament.
And what was Coleman's leadership like during that period? You know, obviously some superstars in the team with the likes of Bale, etc. What was he like to try and galvanise the team? Can you kind of explain, you know, what his management was like?
Yeah, like I said, it's very structured. We had a very good. He had very good people around him with the staff and the coaches, and he created that environment where we'd all have a laugh. If we were all going out, we were all going out. We also knew our jobs. It was very. We had group meetings. We had individual meetings. We had, you know, the players were able to give feedback. We had a great captain in Ashley Williams, and I think, yeah, just the whole. Nothing was off the table. We could go and chat to him whenever we wanted. And I think, like I said, pretty much every player would have run through a brick wall for him just because how he used to treat the players. Even the hardest thing is the easiest thing is the players that are playing every time. The hardest thing is to get the group on board. And I think he managed to do that so well. And again, everyone just bought into, we're at the Euros. We want to give it a go. This is a great achievement for the country. It's a great personal achievement. We've got to make the most of it. And yeah, to be fair, I remember he pulled me before the first game and he said, look, I'm going to go with Gareth up top. I was like, yeah, fine, no worries. I didn't expect to play, but it's like, you've been great for me. You'll get your chance to play at the Euros. And I fully believed him. I was ready to come run through a brick wall for him, even though, you know, I played a couple of times at the Euros and he kept his word. And that happened with a couple of players as well.
On that England game, I think when the goal went in last night, I think Gary Neville and all the management team went running down the sideline, didn't they? It's just interesting how obviously that emotional aspect, obviously with England, and again, I don't want to kind of compare Wales to England. During that time, England lost to Iceland, and obviously Wales went on to actually improve and advance through the tournament. Do you think that in the tournament at the moment, when everyone's predicting who the best team could potentially be to go on and win it?
Yeah, I think, certainly with this group of players, the problem is you can have the best players in the world, but if you don't get it right on that game, it's you just never know which way it's going to go. They've got to perform at the end of the day as a team, and you know, watching the game the other day, you know, they managed to get through it, and sometimes that's all you have to do in tournament football. It can't always be pretty and win by an ease. They're all good teams. They're all good players. So especially with the pressure of the environment, it's difficult. But yeah, like I said, you always get 1, 2, 3, 4 players that always kind of stick out, and they're like your talisman to kind of get you through in moments that you need them. And certainly with England, they've got a couple of them. And when we were playing in the Euros, we had a couple of them as well.
Just on back to Wales on that tournament, did you feel like you embraced being the underdog? You mentioned the pressure was on England during that game, and obviously going into the other fixtures with Belgium, etc. Did you kind of use that as your kind of tool to build momentum and obviously go and play without fear?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, they kept us away from a lot of media and everything, but we could see all the fan zones from back home, and everyone's just having a pie. Everyone's loving it. It was just an excuse to get, you know, absolutely trolleyed everywhere. And even the atmosphere in France, that the fans, like, they would come to our hotel, they'd be singing for hours outside. And we just got that sense of everyone's behind us. It's not against us, where I think, you know, the media and certainly the pressure with the England play, everyone's looking for you to make a mistake or not to qualify or give them a reason to go against you. it's not very positive. Even after the first game, you see the attention, it's just negative, negative, negative. And I think that certainly played into our hands. We never felt the pressure, but the only pressure we put on was from ourselves because we knew we could do well. But yeah, I can see certainly that the only reason that England won't win is probably the pressure that is put on them from the media, the fans, and the whole nation, because they need to win it. Yeah, I think that could be a point where they struggle with.
You mentioned, the likes of Modric and the other players that you played against, and that elite level. Your words were that elite level, and observing that. What did you learn from maybe the Euros and being part of that and playing against those teams? Is there anything that you learnt during that whole tournament? It doesn't necessarily have to be playing. It might be things that you've brought into maybe your values in life when you reflect on that time that has changed you or made you think about sport or things differently. Can you recall anything?
No, I think it was just a sense of we kind of deserve to be here. Yeah, when big players turn up in big games, and I don't think the gap is that big. I never thought I'd be playing in the European semi-final when I was, 10. I would have laughed at that. But I think, yeah, anything's kind of possible. And seeing, playing against Ronaldo's, playing with Gareth, who had an amazing career playing at Real Madrid. I don't think anything's too far away. And I think now that I've transitioned out of football, I feel like nothing's not attainable. I don't feel scared or put off by anything. I feel like if I can achieve what I achieved in football, and don't get me wrong, I wish I achieved a lot more, and I probably look back and wanted to achieve a lot more. But moving into something else, it hasn't given me any fear to think that I can't do what I want to do.
You mentioned then that you could have potentially achieved more within the game. If you could go back, would you have done anything differently? Would you have maybe changed anything just to ensure that quote might be different if you were to live that experience again?
Yeah, 100%. I think what stopped me was overthinking. I'm a huge overthinker. I think if I sorted my issues, and the best players play without fear, or they use that fear in a different way. Whereas I put the pressure on myself so much to achieve what I felt like I could achieve. It kind of put a barrier on me doing it, and then if I didn't play it, or I didn't do well, or I didn't score, then it's just a negative. It just kind of like keeps pushing you down like that, and I wasn't able to deal with it very well. And then obviously I knew I was struggling with injury as well, and that was always in the back of my head. And some things you can't help, like I couldn't help having to retire at 28. I couldn't stop that, but certainly in my younger years, there would have been moments where I wish I'd dealt with it a little bit better. I made decisions that maybe I was a bit naive, but all in all, it's a great learning experience. I achieved, what I achieved. I was happy with it, but I definitely feel like I could have pushed it a lot more.
You mentioned the word overthinking. Do you think, you mentioned obviously if you haven't scored, but did injury impact that as well in terms of being out the team and not being able to kind of be involved, and you can only control the controllables, but obviously your body's not allowing you to get involved within that? Is that something that maybe triggered those thought processes as well?
Yeah, 100%. I think, like I said, as a footballer, if you're by yourself or you go back, you do overthink everything. It's always a constant battle. Are you going to play? Are you not? Are you going to perform? Are you not? If you don't perform, are you going to be out of the team? These kind of things are a constant battle that kind of stops you from just playing with freedom and enjoying football and going to your, achieving what you know you can achieve. Like I said, the best players are able to do that on a more consistent basis. But yeah, I certainly think, especially towards the middle part of my career, I could feel something's not right here. And your mind's telling you to do something, but your body's not able to kind of get to where you were. And I can remember I had a comment, I think when I was like 26 or something, and they were like, "Then you're not as sharp as I thought you were, or you don't run as much as I thought you did." And that was from a coach or a manager, and that kind of plays in your mind a little bit, and you know yourself. From 19 to 21, I was kind of like on the trajectory, and then I kind of plateaued, and I was kind of scrambling and fighting and trying to live off a little bit of promise. But I just never got that consistent run of goals and games, and then you see friends move on, do well, they have a good season, they move to the Premier League, scoring goals, playing international. I'm like, I could have done that, I should have done that. But yeah, I think definitely speaking to someone helped me with that and helped me understand that and just get over it and be able to. But I did hold on to it for a long time.
In terms of those comments from the coach, how did that make you feel? Was that kind of an incentive to try and become better, or was it physically you couldn't get to that level again? I'm just interested in that.
Yeah, I felt like physically I just couldn't get back to that level. I mean, there was glimpses, certainly after my surgery, or previously before my surgery. I was at MK Dons in the Championship. Things weren't going well. I went on loan to Aberdeen, and I scored quite a few goals before the Euros. And even that, I did have a good loan and scored some goals and did well, and obviously got into the Euro squad. But I can remember quarterfinals of the Euros against Northern Ireland, and Chris Coleman told me to go and warm up, and I'm trying to warm up on the side. I'm like, my hip is killing. Please don't put me on, because if you put me on, I'm going to look like an absolute tit. And then luckily the semi-final, the adrenaline just got me through that. But because it was a long season, my hip was really struggling, and 4 games into the next season, it just completely went. So it was always inevitable that it was going to happen. But I think from in your head, you don't think the worst. You just think, I've got to get through it. But certainly the restrictions play a doubt in your mind to think, am I as good as what I was at 20, or can I do what I... And knowing that you haven't done that and you haven't achieved it in a long time, it does play a part.
I suppose during that process as well, you're probably thinking, will I ever get this opportunity again? And do I just have to go through the pain of trying to just try and play through it? Was that kind of a thought process as well?
Yeah, 100%, because after my surgery, I was in Holland. I didn't play for 14 months, and I had like a little trial at Scunthorpe. They were in League One at the time. Had a great training session, got back, I was in bits, came on, I literally signed on Thursday, came on Saturday after 14 months of not playing, came on for half an hour, did really well, and started on Tuesday, pulled my hamstring straight away. And it was just like, I probably wasn't ready to do that, and I needed to manage it better, but I didn't want to show any kind of weakness or any reason for them to kind of push me to one side. And I think that definitely was then the catalyst for me to just keep trying, keep pushing myself, and just not being able to play. Same like my last club at Plymouth, I signed there, and I don't know how I passed the medical, to be fair. I should have been retired there and then, but again, I just pushed through it. I just showed that I could get to a certain level. But then it was just when I was playing and training, I was just in an absolute pickle.
In terms of maybe coping strategies then, did you ever find yourself going down like a few negative rabbit holes in terms of maybe turning to alcohol maybe, or kind of going out more than you should have? Did that ever happen to you? Because obviously these stories are common within football, and even in other sports as well, and people try and numb the pain of feeling injured or not being able to reach their potential, like you said. Did that ever happen to you in your journey during that process?
No, to be fair, towards the end, I always believed that I would get back, and I did everything I could. I was very dedicated. I used to get up. I used to get to the gym early before training. After training, I'll be in the gym. I'd always try and feel like I've got another couple of years left. The surgeon, when I had the surgery, said, if you're lucky, you'll get another 5 years. So in my head, I thought I'd get 5 years, not 18 months. But yeah, certainly after I retired, I think it hit me really, really badly. I just didn't want to be in the gym. I lost, I put on loads of weight. I was drinking a lot, and just struggling with not having the purpose. You lose your identity a little bit because all you've done since the age of 6 is play football, and everyone's saying like you play football, you could have a career, then you have a career and you do it daily, miss the camaraderie of the changing rooms and the banter and everything. And then you're just stuck at home thinking, well, what am I going to do now? What's next? I'm 28. I'm still young. So I really struggled with that for the next, I'd say 3 or 4 years. And then it wasn't until, a couple of years ago where I actually got some real help with that. And that changed my perspective on everything, really.
Did you find yourself during that process of, maybe losing friends because you're not the footballer anymore? And you mentioned identity and that identity shift. Obviously, the reason I say that is, again, just reflecting on maybe the conversations I had with other footballers. As I mentioned, those kind of things happened during that transition. What was it like for you in that sense? And how did you maybe seek, other pathways to ensure that there is a kind of a motivational drive for you to have a purpose within your life? I'm just interested on that.
Yeah, to be fair, I always had quite a close group of friends and people around. I never used to be like flash and have loads of stuff going on. I used to keep myself to myself. I had two kids at 23 and 24, so I had a young family. And I think, once I come out of that, the only thing that changed was the motivation to go and do something. I always had the motivation for football, and as I was so dedicated, I'd always kind of that would be my focus. That would be my reason to get up. And I was always interested in other things, business and property and things like that, but I never really committed to it as much as I did with football. And that's So in terms of, it's taken me a good couple of years after I retired to understand, the power of networking and speaking to people and learning from people and opening myself up to different industries and conversations, and just being able to talk about it. Because I'd say up to 3 or 4 years ago, I wouldn't talk about anything. I wouldn't talk to anyone about it. I'd keep myself to myself. And I feel like that's quite a common theme. You must have seen it with people you've spoken to since they retired as well.
Absolutely. And it kind of leads me on to my final question, Simon, is what does the future hold for you then? So you obviously reflected on everything that we've spoken about today, but what does the future hold for you? What is it that you want to maybe pursue now going forward, now your football career has come to an end?
Yeah, well, we've got a couple of business interests going on. We've got Beyond Performance, which is a wellness brand. We do a lot of consultancy in sport as well on the side of that. And I do miss the football industry a little bit as well now. So maybe dabble into something that I like, speaking to players and mentoring and consultancy, something like that. So potentially moving back into football at some stage, but certainly the other business interests are at the forefront at the minute.
What we'll do, Simon, is we'll put the links to your business and your of interest in the description. So if anyone's listening or watching this, they can click and check that out. I just want to say thank you for being on the podcast. Thank you for being open and honest. Again, your career is fascinating. The fact that there's been a lot of transitions, international football, different managers, etc. So that's given some great insight, and hopefully our listeners and viewers can really take some knowledge from what you've spoken about today, Simon. And I just want to wish you all the best in the future, and thank you again.
No, right.